Welcome back, Pillow Frighters. I'm Kay.
And I'm Emma, and we're two out of your three horror besties bringing you all things horror.
Today, we have with us two of the masterminds behind Southern California's most original haunted attraction, Knott's Scary Farm. While other events drop obscene amounts of money on buying up big-name IPs, these gentlemen work tirelessly to create wholly unique and original visions to terrify your scream season. Let's welcome Daniel Miller and Gus Krueger.
Hi.
Hello there.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. We start every interview with a couple of questions we ask everyone. What is the first horror movie you remember ever seeing? And which is the first horror movie that ever scared you?
Halloween definitely is the one that really got me into horror. My mom was a huge horror fan. She loved it. Would take us all the time to see, everything. That period in the 80s, my brothers and I just loved horror. So big, huge fan.
Wow. For me, probably, I can't remember exactly, but it was either a Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is not technically horror, but it fits the genre, right?
Oh, for us theater kids, it's horror.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I saw that on a bootleg VHS when I was about 10, so that was fun. And then that and Evil Dead was the first two that I can remember. Yeah, so just perfectly normal start. But I don't remember ever really getting scared, though. It was more like, this is cool, and just watching and taking it in. I think the things that scared me were like, you're all going to die in nuclear war. Like, well, that sounds hideous. So these boogeymen in the woods are like, yeah, that's not so bad.
So I do have a little amendment to that. My dad never took me to horror films. He thought it would be too freaky. So he knew that we loved horror films. He decided at one point to take us to Amityville Horror. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. And then all the way to it, everyone kept on telling me, oh, it's real. It's real.
Oh.
And that scarred me. So I basically was at a drive-in. I just hid it under a pillow. I couldn't see it. I just remember this pig floating in the window, Jody, I think her name was.
Yeah.
And it just freaked me out. That was the first one I was really terrified of.
I feel like that movie still scares me, as an adult. Sometimes I'll just put it on, and when they're like, get out, it's it actually gets under your skin. So, yeah, I see that. All right, well, let's talk all things Scary Farm, and let's take it from the very top. How did you guys become scenic designer, maze engineers?
I went to UC Irvine, and I became a theater major. And I actually started my horror journey. They had a maze, like the sci-fi club of UC Irvine. They loved making haunted houses. So every year they would make a haunted house for home. It was this tiny little thing. And I loved being a monster in it. And I kind of got into the creation of it. And I switched majors to theater and to set design. So from that point on, we went to New York University. I got an MFA for that. But actually in between, I took 1 year and I was a monster here. I was in Uncle Ernie's Madhouse, which is sort of a hillbilly thing at the time. Actually, it was House of Maniacs. I was Uncle Ernie as a layover character from the Madhouse. So I was a deranged hillbilly. But I really love set design. So I continued at New York University. But one of the first places I applied to 26 years ago was Knott's Scary Farm, because I knew about Knott's Scary Farm. And when I heard that the job actually entailed original creations of mazes, I bid in hard. I loved it. So I've been here for 26 years. I've probably created around 26 to 27 mazes that are original, and worked on dozens more. But it's a great job. I mean, I every day is a dream come true, or nightmare come true. So, yeah.
Yes, mine not nearly as traditional as his. I actually I didn't study scenic design. I studied TV video. So I was on the path to be an editor, basically working bum jobs here and there. And a buddy of mine kept bugging me to come work at Scary Farm. And I tried 1 year. I auditioned, and it was late in the run, and whatever I had wasn't what they were looking for. So like, get out of here. So I was like, whatever. And then a few years later, he's like, nah, come do it again. They're not doing any of that stuff again. They need people. I'm like, okay. So I applied and I started working as a seasonal talent like him. But my first gig here was as a monster. I was just some random skeleton in Elvira's Nightmares.
Cool.
So that was the maze I started in. But from there, even though, with the little bit of I had done some theater classes as well, but it was really focusing on that. So yeah, I was studying TV and film, and I had been working a little bit with some buddies on an improv show, and I was just doing set design for them. Not set design, but more build, because it wasn't design. It was just, we have trash and I could put it together. But from there, the second or third year I was working as a talent here, I got onto the carpentry team and wound up working a season there. And for the next year, I got recruited to work on the props crew, which is the props crew here at Knott's is different than a props crew on like a movie, or it's more like the scenic package, the art direction type, the set decor, as opposed to just hand props. I always like to clarify it because props can be, it's the everything, right? It's the look. So I started doing that. And then I had a couple seasons off. And when I came back, the people running props at the time, they asked me to come back. And, probably within a year and a half of me coming back, I was running the props crew. I just worked hard and I didn't shoot for it. It just sort of fell into my lap and I went with it. And then I ran the props crew here, working closely with this guy. And kind of like I said, it's more like we're art directing in his absence when he's not there, at least as far. That's how I looked at it. So he trusted me a ton to help him bring his stuff to life. But I ran the props crew for about 5 or 6 years. And I kind of I felt a little complacent. And at the time, one of our designers had left for another park. And there was an opportunity there. There was a maze that didn't have anyone assigned at the time. So I went to the head of entertainment at the time and I said, hey, if nobody's overseeing this maze and you need somebody to just do it because it's just sort of this prop heavy thing, I'd be happy to just do that because I'm kind of getting antsy doing what I'm doing. And she just looked at me and said, oh, so you want to design, huh? You're designing this sign. And I was like, huh? Okay. Or did you? So I was like, okay. And it was just like these weird jumbled wagon camp graphics that the guy going out had just sort of thrown in. So I just placed them together and I'm like, how does that look to you? And she goes, oh yeah, that's great. Fine. Thanks. And I was like, okay. She's like, yeah, we'll talk about what that is. I was like, okay. Just a few days later, basically, she's just, maybe even 2 days. She's like, oh, yeah, you're going to do, in addition to that, I'm going to have you do the log ride and the mine ride overlays because we're taking talent out and it's going to just be more prop stuff. And the other guys are busy. And I was like, okay. And she said, yeah, just come up with some stuff. Okay. And I was like, okay, so we'll do skeletons over here and ghosts over here and it'll be fun. And I came up with the stuff and did this to her. And then we had another venue at the time that was being moved from inside the park. This was Endgames that was moved backstage. And all I just thought was, man, I don't know how they're going to fit that into a warehouse. And then I literally, like a week after I thought that, she's like, oh, hey, I need you to move this into this warehouse. And I was still running the props department at the same time. So it was just kind of like, huh? So I don't know how I did it, but I managed to survive that season and then got through that season. And she just said, oh, by the way, I'm just going to move you over to design full time. And it was weird and wild. And it really was just a matter of working hard and doing it for the right reasons and just taking advantage of opportunities. So,
and at that time, that was more the typical way of how.
Yeah.
Now, it's actually weird that they actually hired a MFA designer.
Yeah, and honestly, if I came with that story and tried to get my job today, if I didn't have my experience, they'd be like, "Get out of here." I guess I'm doing okay because I've been doing it for like 10 years now. So
that's awesome. It's a real trial by fire.
Yeah, it was. It just sounds so tiring right now. I couldn't imagine.
This year we've got 2 new mazes. Well, this year you've got 2 new mazes. Widows.
We've all got them. It's fine.
Mazes for everyone.
Yeah.
They belong to the Knotts. So we have 2 new mazes: Widows and 8 Fingers 9 Boogeyman.
Yes.
Where did these nightmares come from?
8 Fingers 9, the Boogeyman. He's I just had been wanting to, this idea I probably had about 5 years ago, and it just been kicking around. It went through various iterations and never was really fully fleshed out. It was just sort of like a page in one of my pitches, hey, here's this one. But this year it really, last year, because, that's our cycle of these things. We start working on it at the end of last year, but it really started to come together in my mind. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create something different and unique for Knott, based on like grim fairy tales along that train of thought. But I wanted to create our own boogeyman. I wanted to do a boogeyman maze because I haven't ever really done just a primary evil protagonist or antagonist. I guess it depends on your point of view. Maze, but I wanted to create our own character. I didn't want to borrow anything, and I wanted to make something that just was strong and creepy and unique to us and could be a lasting legacy character. And really the vibe came from a couple of his things where he had done before with just the Tooth Fairy maze he did and Peter Pumpkin Eater. They were these strong characters that drove the narrative. But like I said, I wanted to create something new. So I really dove into what that is and what I wanted to be. I wanted to take it to colonial times. So when you go into the maze, it's like you're walking into a storybook. And that stylistically, it's not like anything else we have here. It's completely different. I grew up around theme parks and just loved wax museums and things like that. So I kind of wanted that, like you're going through a dark ride type vibe of scenic, where you have tons of murals, but you also have like some relief stuff on the walls to break it up, but then like a lot of 3D. So it really felt like you're in this weird, vibrant world of a storybook. So that was the push of the maze, and to just tell the story of this poor kid who's abandoned in magic woods and left to die, and he's brought back to life by a kindly spirit, but because of the circumstances of his death and how angry he was and his hunger, he taps into all the negative evil of the woods when he's brought back to life, and he transforms into this monster that is immediately empowered with all of the power of nature in these woods and all of the knowledge of the woods. And he's driven by hunger and revenge to go back to town and take care of business.
That's dark. I love it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun to put together.
So Widows started creating last year. I was just shooting the breeze with a couple of painters, Glow Hara. She's the bride on Ghost Town Streets. She's the one with the candle. Her and I were talking about what scares us. And previously that night, I was walking my dog, and it was the time of year when spiders were everywhere. And they were just spinning their spider webs. And I was walking through, and I just got a face full of web. And I hate that feeling. I've read somewhere that was like the number one fear for men is walking through spider webs. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just saying that
written by a man who hates spiders.
So she said one of her favorite mazes of old was the Asylum. I designed that several years, and she's always creeped out by hospitals. And she was like, I really also hate like hospices and convalescent homes, just because it's like such a weird reminder of death. Yeah. And I just had like a little light bulb like pop in my head. It's like, wow, what if we smash those two together? What if we have like spiders and grandmas together, and how would that work? So the name came first, which was Widows. So I was like, ooh, Black Widows and Widows. It's kind of fun, to smash those together. But we came up with this concept of demonic spiders burrowing underground and into a convalescent home, taking over the patient's skin. So like they would go into the grandmother's skin, and they would be spiders, but they would be sort of in the bodies of these grandmothers. I thought that would be horribly creepy. Now, I think I said before, I'm a huge horror film fan. I also, right at the time, was seeing a movie called X, which has this extremely creepy scene where Mia Goth, she's like an elderly, she's made up to be an elderly woman, Pearl, and she's seducing this man. And it was just this creepy scene where this elderly woman's like licking this. And I thought, well, what if part of a sub-story of it is that these grandmothers were seducing the victims, so they would have to give birth to a clutch of eggs before the night was out. Half of the maze is inside of a convalescent home. That's pretty hyper-realistic. I like to put a lot of action into the scenery, so like everything tells the story. So the whole thing's kind of been torn apart by these large spiders that are everywhere, trying to burrow into the skins of these grandmothers. And then the second half is in these spider caves. Now, we love to do Easter eggs here. And I also want to do another layer. There's a lot of layers already, but I want to do another layer. We used to have a maze here called Voodoo. So I figured, okay, I'm going to tell this story where one of the voodoo priestesses actually was put into this convalescent home. She was so upset by that she cursed the convalescent home, and she created a portal into this under chamber and invited Arachne, the goddess of spiders, to come up and send her sisters into the convalescent home. So she's the reason that all of these spiders are up there attacking the elderly. And the second half of the maze goes into the hierarchy of the spiders. So there's all kinds of different, there's a venom pit where they all collect all their venom and they serve it up to the goddess. And there's priestesses, and there's all this, there's kind of orb weavers who are just sort of the workers. Yeah, it's pretty complex.
You guys have some dark stuff going on.
So,
right?
So some of them just play backgammon, and the rest of them do magic spells.
Yes.
Like that's the difference between them, right? But I'm just wondering, like, what's the path that happens in these retirement homes?
Well, one of the things to consider when you're designing mazes is like some of the ideas are so far-fetched that it's like, how do you actually make a talent able to do that? So we couldn't hire just elderly patients. So that's why I came with the concept. Hey, well, I did. We wanted them to move fast. So it was like, okay, that's why the concept of them having a spider inside of them, being able to move jerkily back and forth and move like the spider is kind of important to this. And they can choose because they can kind of go back to their elderly form and then startle out as a spider.
That's terrible.
Yeah,
it's
new fear
like in a good way, but yeah. Thanks for the new phobias.
Well, and you did share a little bit of the story of your inspiration for the two mazes that we have today, but in the past, or what are some other inspirations that you've had, or some things that have really, sparked that?
It's funny for me, like I said before, I think I'm weird in that I don't have any crazy phobias so much. I just like something will startle me or get me out of, but I don't really have anything that I just see and I'm like, oh, this is horrible. What scares me more than anything is people, because they're the most evil, horrible things on the planet. So really, to me, it's just how do you take, what is it that you can find and create a creepy, weird, eerie atmosphere, and just, we have a very, I think it's a understatement that we have very active imaginations. So, but it's really like, how do you could take just about anything, anywhere, and make a really messed up maze about it. Like you could have grocery store maze and we could turn it into the most hideous thing ever. So it's really just finding, for me, it's like, what's the story? Like, what's the hook? What do I want to tell? Like, what is it that drives me to do this? Because when we commit it to paper and we put it out there, if somebody looks at it and goes, that's the one, we've got to believe in that thing.
Yeah.
Because now we've got a year that we're married to it and we've got to see it through.
And once you have this job, you see almost everything through the lens of, hey, would that make a good maze? Yeah. Or, hey, would that make a good haunt? So even the most banal thing would be really like, oh, that would be good.
And it's funny. The downside of that, which I've learned in the past too, it's just I've had mazes that are more like people are the enemies, like people I think. But when the talent is people and they're kind of tired, it's like, oh, it's a guy. Right. So there's always like, how do you make it a monster? Right. Because no matter what, you got a tired monster and they got an imposing profile. Like you walk around the corner, you walk around, oh, hey, guy, how's it going? That's not quite.
And for me, as weird as it seems, I get a lot of inspiration from nightmares. So I don't have a lot, but every once in a while I'll get up in the middle of the night and just write it all down. I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that? I mean, completely irrational. But usually there's something in there that I can dig from. I'm always in search of something. As a horror junkie, I'm always in search for something that is completely messed up for me. So I want to be scared, Part of the spiders thing is it's a phobia of mine. So it's sort of cathartic to go and design this thing, walk through it every day, and see these giant, massive spiders eating these patients. And I'm like, now I'm kind of numb to it.
Yeah, you get there. It is a way to sort of get over it because we're stuck dealing with it so long. They kind of become friends with it.
How do you keep legacy mazes? Is that what you call like from the previous year? Or I don't know if there's a better term for it.
I've heard the term legacy maze, like
now we're going to have a legit legacy maze this year.
Or I guess, like, what do you, from the mazes that you carry over from the previous year, how do you keep them fresh for people coming back? And then what goes into the decision when you're like, it's time to retire them?
Time. Usually for retirement, it is time and if people like it or not. We do surveys at the end, and if it's just not a popular theme, then usually like, okay, let's move on. So it is somewhat of a mystery even to us. Sometimes like they decide, we kind of scratch our heads and going, oh, that's a little.
Yeah, generally.
But mostly it's just time. It's just
it's really, we have the luxury of with some of our backstage venues that we're able to build it. And, we built it in a way that the fire code allows us to just shut it up. And so the wear and tear on those aren't quite as bad. Some of the ones that are more of the in-park things, like we have Origins and things that require a rebuild every year, there's an absolute toll on the, just you can't keep taking something apart and put it back together and have it be pristine. So there's all of these things, like he said, there's time, there's that shelf life where you have to make that decision. Is the time to go? So we usually do 2 to 3 new mazes a year. Last year we did 3 because it was the 50th and we had a big push, but it's generally so there is that factor of, okay, what are the oldest mazes here? They do make exceptions sometimes if something is extremely popular. Paranormal had a very long run.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's my favorite.
Then, Trick or Treat had a very long run, and in going back to some of our vampire mazes and the Asylum, we do have mazes that have that just guests can't get rid of, like they can't get enough, and they still score so high that they stay around. So yeah, it's time. It's metrics done in surveys and things like that, and it's just sometimes. An idea comes along that's just too good for that particular venue, and sometimes it means the thing that's there, maybe it loses a year of its life because some idea came along that they just wanted to get out there.
And to answer the first part of the question, I'm a little different than most. I really want to pour my blood and guts into the first year, make as complete a story as possible. I usually don't like to revisit and re-up a maze. But every once in a while, it's necessary. Maybe a room, like in Cornstalkers, they just couldn't buy all that corn. It just like it was in California for some reason, it wasn't feasible. So I changed it into like a rat room, for the last year of the Pumpkin Eater. Things like that. We do sometimes like to market that in plus-up mazes, every once in a while. For me, I think though most of the time the guests don't even notice it, but because the push is the major theme of the main.
And usually though you may see some elements for the second year that were wish listed for the first year and didn't happen, but they were far enough along the pipeline that just resources or whatever. So sometimes for second year, and you even see a little bit of that, like we're able to get some of the things into Cinema Slasher this year.
Like Cinema Slasher now.
Chilling Chambers there's even Room 13. All 3 of last year's new mazes do have a little bit extra this year, but usually, we're so crazy ambitious with what we're designing for the new mazes that it just sort of, they're very demanding children. So they need a lot to grow.
The Cinema Slasher thing there was on the marquee, there's a big slasher that they just put it up. So it's actually.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And in Chilling Chambers this year, because Chilling Chambers is sort of the repository of all the mazes of Knott's history. I was able to get new tombstones for Dark Entities in the Depths, which were retired last year.
Those are
so we were
great.
able to. So we put, and the nature of Chilling Chambers in itself, it's just, I think, as long as that maze is a staple of Scary Farm, when a maze goes away, I'll probably be looking at like, I can take that, so that's what that maze is about. Knott's history living on. So we got to think about what I'm going to add to that next year.
What new frights can Scary Farm attendees expect this year beyond the mazes that you just built? Is there new scare zone attractions or Anything like that?
I think the Gauntlet is getting some cool new decor this year.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some,
the cord.
there are some new characters out in Carnival. They're trying to look at what that palette is, and like so the clowns are evolving a little bit. That's kind of fun out there. But yeah, I mean, more of what you come to expect when you visit, and just brand new year of fun
I mean,
and scares.
This obviously she is a huge fan. And I don't know if you were able to tell from her talk today.
You're like, I think it's terrible, but she's a great big.
I've actually never been.
Oh,
This is going to be my first year.
Okay.
But we did go to the opening and
The announcement.
the announcement fest, and going into this with knowing, okay, it's scary, Elvira, like. And I've always wanted to go. So I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But being in the crowd when you were doing the announcement videos that, we got to see, the concept art, which was stunning, a little performance and having, a very, very hyped crowd. But just being around that and hearing the audience, this is my favorite thing ever. I'm so glad they bring this back. I hope they bring this back. I've never heard that level of like just sheer joy with any other haunted attraction. And that's something that you've created an atmosphere, a legacy, as you call it, but also that it is. If people are coming here and being like, people literally screaming with yes, he's here with that when that slasher appeared on the screen. And I mean, this isn't even a question. This is just something to say that's really magical. I'm so excited to go because I want that feeling. I want that for next year. But just you've created something really, really special.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's tough to not, get a little emotional. You got to hide it though. You got to be cool. But yeah, it's tough. It's very satisfying to be in there and hear that applause and all that stuff. It's not a bad feeling.
One of the reasons why we do it. We do it for the fans.
Yeah,
so. We are fans.
We are fans. I go all over the place. Like I couldn't imagine. I love this place. I love getting it started. I love the creating all these nightmares and getting them going and checking in on it. And I love seeing what everybody else does because I'm just such a fan of it. I try to hit as many other things as I can during the year. And it's not even so much as like, oh, we can do that better. It's just I love the vibe of it. There's so much fun. I love going to see all the worlds that everybody creates.
Although we tend to be very analytical when we go. It's not very fun to go with us to
yeah.
How do they do that texture on the wall right there? Oh, I think that's just cement. My wife hated it when I was there. It's like, oh, you're just staring again at the walls.
Walls got cool stuff.
Yeah. But I do love opening night. It's really watching people come out of your maze and seeing their reactions. It's great.
So I didn't know you did it too, because I do it all the time. The first night, going out to your I'll be out at the exit of Widows,
just watching
and just kind of seeing how people leave the maze and talking about it. And it's sort of a thrill to
and even
especially strangers, people you don't know,
right?
And they get it. They got the story, and they got all the scares, and yeah, it's a bit of a very special moment.
It can certainly turn a rough night around. That's for sure.
Yeah, for Asylum, the very first year, it was a little startling because I did it for a couple of years, and I would get good reactions. But for that one, people were quiet, and people were somber, and I was like, "What is happening?" And later I found out that they were, because it was the first time that they really saw a maze like that, they were kind of stunned by it. So, because I got great reviews of it. And I was like, oh, okay. So
they were amazed at how good the talent was that year.
Yeah. You're in all my mazes. What the heck?
I know. I jumped maze to maze. I did Nightmares, and then I did Malice in Wonderland, and then I did Blood Bayou.
Not mine.
But then I did Asylum, and my last year at a maze was Hatchet High.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. I'm very excited to be seeing you in the fog.
Knott's Scary Farm is open September 19th through November 2nd in Buena Park, California. Come check out Gus and Daniel's nightmares if you dare.
And until next time, sweet screams, everyone.
And whatever you do, don't fall asleep first.